This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm your host, Gabriella Power. Coming up on the show, is there anyone more unpopular than Meghan Markle? Well, it turns out there is, and his name is Humza Yousaf, Scotland's outgoing First Minister. He announced he's quitting this week, so we'll take a look at the legacy he leaves behind, which includes an obsession with identity politics and a track record of failing women. We'll speak with author and commentator Ollie London about why his resignation is a win for Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling and women's rights groups around the world. We're almost 6 months away until Americans head to the polls for the presidential election. So where are we at with this? Well, RFK has qualified for the ballot in 4 states. We'll be joined by boss lady Amanda Rose to unpack this all for us. And King Charles is back attending his first major public event since his cancer diagnosis. Journalists Angela Mollard and Riley Sullivan will be joining us on Power Hour for a deep dive on all the royal news. But first, I want to start by addressing the crisis that's unfolding at prestigious American universities as we speak. If you missed it, this is what took place at Columbia University on Tuesday night. Anti-Israel protesters turned so violent, police in riot gear were called in. Hundreds of arrests were made and classes have been cancelled, but it wasn't just at Columbia University in New York. Right on the other side of the country, pro-Palestine protests erupted on the campus of UCLA.
Watch out! Watch out!
Since Hamas terrorists attacked Israel on October 7, we've seen pro-Palestine protests rage out of control, and a dark underbelly of anti-Semitism has been exposed. And as the Israel-Hamas war rages on and Hamas refuses to release the remaining 129 hostages, what we're seeing play out appears to be getting worse. Now, just watching this vision is horrifying, but for Jewish students who have worked and studied incredibly hard for the opportunity to learn and experience college life at these elite institutions, well, many of them are scared. Instead of creating memories with their friends in what should be some of the best years of their lives, they're terrified. They're scared of studying in a place where their religion should be respected, a place which is meant to be their home for 4 years. Some of them are scared of their fellow students and what might happen next. This week, I spoke with the senior Columbia University student, Ben Solomon. These are his words about what he's experiencing and how he feels right now.
As to the future, I am scared because I think so many young students have bought into a narrative that delegitimizes the existence of Israel as a Jewish state, and too many universities hire and protect professors who express such vile viewpoints that create unsafe environments for Jewish and specifically Israeli students.
Ben continued to open up about some of the horrific acts that are being displayed at these protests. American flags have been burnt, anti-Semitic and pro-terror messages have been chanted, and some Jewish students have been physically harassed. But what stood out to Ben is a double standard that it seems to exist when it comes to the college professors and leaders in calling this issue out.
And the question which I ask is, why don't the universities enforce the same standards for Jewish students? If Klansmen were intimidating black students on campus, there would be a police presence within minutes. Same if there were anti-gay marches in response to the Orlando massacre of 50 LGBT Americans. We would never tolerate attacks on students for the actions of the governments from the countries where they originally come. And I think there are terrible double standards on campus.
The anti-Israel demonstrations are occurring right around the world, including right here in Australia. It's been revealed by Sky News Australia today that children as young as 3 have been coached to take part in anti-Israel protests in what child psychologists are describing as child abuse. It's hard to believe that this is taking place in countries like Australia and America, and it's heartbreaking to witness and report, and it cannot continue. We need leaders now more than ever to step up and call this out so students like Ben don't have to live and study in fear, and future generations can live in a tolerant society where there's no place for anti-Semitism. Joining us now is author and media personality Ollie London. Ollie, thank you for joining us. Let's start with the anti-Israel chaos that's unfolding at American college campuses. They've well and truly intensified. The protests turned violent at UCLA, and at Columbia University in New York, police were forced to disperse activists.
This is the New York City Police Department. You have been warned as per City College to leave the campus. If you refuse to leave, you may be placed under arrest.
Back it up! Back up! Back it up! That means you! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up!
Ollie, firstly, your reaction to this vision?
Well, the protests and clashes at UCLA have been so far the worst out of all of the anti-Israel protests that have swept across the US. Clashes broke out last night after Jewish students have been denied entry to the campus for days. And the UCLA campus is actually public property, so any member of the public can access the campus. This Jewish student was denied. They formed a human chain. They told him Zionists were not welcome, even though he pays tuition fees and he's a student. So we saw this severe act of anti-Semitism. We saw a Jewish man that was tasered by a woman that was chasing a Palestinian activist. We saw a woman beaten with her head stomped, left unconscious. And then last night, of course, we saw large numbers of pro-Israeli protesters clashed with the anti-Israel activists, and it turned very violent. Pepper spray was used, bear mace. They were fighting each other using sticks, hitting each other over the heads. There were a lot of injuries there. And I spoke to somebody directly on campus, one of the journalists, and they said that the UCLA campus police were given a stand-down order for many, many hours. They weren't intervening. Of course, the LAPD sent riot police there. But while the riot police were on scene, it did take them a long time to get involved. And California Governor Newsom did criticize the campus for handling this very bad and saying it could have been prevented and there will be consequences for the violence and the perpetrators.
It's just appalling. And what concerns me is it's been 7 months since Hamas attacked Israel. There are no signs that this situation is getting better. It appears that the dark underbelly of anti-Semitism that has been exposed is getting worse by the day. Where's the leadership?
Yeah, we're seeing shocking incidences around the world. London has become a no-go zone. You have the Metropolitan Police telling people that hold Hamas are terrorist signs that they could get arrested if they do not disperse. You had a Jewish man being told not to walk across the street because he was quite openly Jewish, according to a police officer. So we've seen police failing to act. In terms of in New York, there's been severe anti-Semitism, and New York has the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. And we've seen the worst cases there, the protests at CUNY, the protests at Columbia, and many other universities have really turned violent. We've seen Jewish people being denied access to campus. Columbia University professor Shai Davide, who is Jewish, was denied entry, whereas Congresswoman Ilhan Omar was allowed entry, and her daughter had been suspended, yet she was allowed entry to stir the pot and to kind of speak to these protesters. And it's really out of control now. New York Mayor Eric Adams has completely condemned these protests. He has said the New York Police Department are cracking down severely. But we need leadership. We need Biden. We need in the UK Rishi Sunak. In Australia Anthony Albanese. doing something to stop this, because it's really reaching unprecedented levels that we haven't really seen since 1930s Germany.
Yeah, well said. Look, Ollie, you've been calling out anti-Semitism on your platform and some of the extreme behaviour and attitudes that we are seeing being expressed by some activists. This week you shared this video of LGBT pro-Palestine demonstrators at a university in California.
Violation of Penal Code Section 409. The following routes of dispersal are available. Exit the university quad area of Cal Poly Humboldt.
Trans icon Caitlyn Jenner shared this post on X saying, "Deport these morons and send them to Iran or Gaza. Have fun being burnt alive, beheaded or pushed off a building. It's illegal and punishable by death." Why isn't the message getting through, Ollie?
Well, it really is crazy when you see LGBT activists, you see the Queers for Palestine group, you see the Trans for Palestine group. And, you know, these people are protesting in favour of people that would throw them off buildings, that behead them in the streets. You have lynch mobs in the West Bank, in Gaza, that will kill someone for being gay. In Iran, people get executed for being gay. Yet these LGBT activists are screaming resistance is justified, liberation, end the occupation. They're chanting pro-Hamas slogans. And they are so indoctrinated and brainwashed with their hatred for Israel because of the propaganda that's been fed to them on apps like TikTok and through university campuses, that they cannot see the total hypocrisy of supporting a group of people that would instantly throw them off the building the moment they step foot in Gaza.
It's wild. One positive takeaway is that there are people like yourself and Caitlyn Jenner calling this out. Do you find yourself getting trolled for posting messages supporting Jewish people?
Yeah, absolutely. It's insane. Anyone that speaks up for the Jewish community is subjected to horrendous levels of hate. We saw Caitlyn Jenner was attacked by a swarm of protesters while she was attending the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And they were really screaming in her face, shame on you, simply because she speaks up for Jewish people. I have people, shouting at me in the streets. I don't really go out much at the moment because it really is a no-go zone in London. I'm not even Jewish, but because I'm speaking up for the Jewish people, I have become a target. I'm getting a lot of hate. But you know what? I am not going to be one of those people like in 1930s Germany that stood silent, one of those people that turned a blind eye to allow this anti-Semitism to spread to very dangerous levels. So all of us need to be brave. We need to, stop listening to all these crazy woke activists, and we need to speak up for the Jewish community now.
It's hard to believe that you're not able to go out and feel safe. When did it change for you?
Well, I'm always outspoken about political issues online, but, I've been very outspoken since October 7th. I witnessed the videos, I watched the atrocity videos, the 43-minute video prepared for journalists in Israel, and it was the worst thing you can imagine. I'm not going to describe how horrific it was, but when we saw that, and then the same day as that attack had just happened, in London, thousands of people went to the Israeli embassy to protest and to condemn Israel after Israel's attack. So we know this is a movement that has no logic. These people, did not give the Israeli people a chance to grieve. They are still going through trauma. There are still 129 hostages, and there are 300,000 Israelis internally displaced. And, Gabriella, it's not about politics, whether you're pro-Palestine or pro-Israel. It should be about being pro-humanity. And Israeli people want to see peace. They're a very peaceful people. They don't want their sons and daughters to be killed in Gaza fighting to try and, stop Hamas. They want to be safe, but at the end of the day, they have to stop Hamas to prevent any other further atrocities, to prevent these rocket attacks, and to prevent a repeat of October 7th.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned earlier, it appears as though we're seeing supporters of Hamas pop up every day. Just this week here in Australia, organisers of a pro-Palestine protest at a university called ANU went on national radio to admit that they're strong supporters of the terrorist organisation Hamas. Ollie, you've revealed that there's evidence that Hamas terrorists are now making money on social media app TikTok. You've posted on X that the Chinese-owned app is allowing multiple Hamas accounts to make money via the live stream gift feature. Can you explain how this is happening?
Yeah, I've seen several examples of Hamas terrorists wearing full Hamas gear, holding a gun, live streaming from Gaza, and people around the world are sending them stickers and gifts which convert into monetary value. And, TikTok has not been doing enough to clamp down on this. We saw last year TikTok had the Bin Laden's letter to America trend, which got tens and tens of millions of views. TikTok did take action, but it took them several days. And, TikTok is not doing enough. They're allowing pro-Hamas propaganda to spread. And many of these university students from Columbia to Yale to Harvard, they are getting their anti-Semitism, they're getting their information from TikTok, which is notoriously pro-Palestine and anti-Israel. So I think TikTok is a significant threat, especially when it's indoctrinating youth to become hateful towards the Jewish community.
US Congress recently passed a bill proposing to ban TikTok over national security concerns. What's your view?
So President Biden did actually sign that, which now gives TikTok around 9 months to divest and sell the company or face an outright ban. And TikTok is, of course, going to appeal this. It's likely they're going to do a lawsuit and say that this is violating their First Amendment rights to free speech. However, TikTok has said they're not going to sell. They refuse to sell. They're going to fight this case. And the Chinese government has interestingly said they do not want to sell, but if a sale is forced, they will make sure that the algorithm is what is not changed. They want the algorithm to be the same. So the algorithm that promotes transgender ideology, the algorithm that is anti-Israel, is pro-Democrat candidates, anti-Republican, they want to keep that algorithm should the sale be forced.
Okay, finally, before I let you go, Ollie, we have to talk about Scotland's outgoing First Minister, Humza Yousaf. I said on Sky News earlier this week, he's the man who made the headlines around the world for all the wrong reasons. He's a person who's become obsessed with identity politics and, of course, has had a pretty big failure when it comes to listening to women, and that may have contributed to his political demise. Ollie, how would you describe the legacy he leaves behind?
Well, Humza Yousaf is a deeply unpopular figure in the UK, perhaps more unpopular than Meghan Markle, and that really is saying something. He's been divisive. In 2020, he had a speech in the Scottish Parliament where he was lambasting too many white people in government in positions of power, even though Scotland is 95% white. He then, of course, had this hate crime law, which went into effect on April 1st, April Fool's Day. And he actually received thousands of complaints, more than J.K. Rowling, for his divisive anti-white speech from back in 2020. So he's been incredibly divisive. This decision, however, does come because he abruptly cancelled a power-sharing deal with the Green Party in Scotland, causing them to say that they would vote against him in a no-confidence vote. So he really didn't have a political future. But I think a lot of Scottish people and people around the world are breathing a sigh of relief and hoping that he is replaced by someone that actually is less divisive and focuses more on protecting Scottish people and protecting British interests.
And you're right, we've heard people in Scotland and right around the world express their joy, and many have said good riddance. What does the SNP need to learn from this? As Humza Yousaf lasted just over a year, will his successor be any better?
SNP has had scandals in the past. Of course, you've had Nicola Sturgeon. Her husband has been arrested multiple times over corruption allegations. So they have a kind of a checkered past. Labour, which is led by Anna Samwar, who is also very divisive and said a very similar speech to Humza Yousaf regarding Scotland being full of too many white people in positions of power. He actually, in the last poll conducted in March, he was leading by 1% in terms of popularity. So if there is a snap election, he could well become the next First Minister. And, he has been divisive. He has said that he will add misogyny to the new hate speech law. And that could also include transgender biological males that can claim misogyny should that law go into effect.
Okay, we know J.K. Rowling has been critical of Humza Yousaf, saying that he's experiencing karma right now. Is it a win for J.K. Rowling and women's rights campaigners?
It absolutely is. I think the way Humza Yousaf conducted himself, personally attacking J.K. Rowling, I think that's unbecoming of somebody that's a leader of a country. Their job is to create unity and to speak with people that have different opinions. He should have been meeting with J.K. Rowling, with women's rights campaigners, meeting with trans campaigners, and trying to find some kind of middle ground. How can we make sure that everyone feels safe, everyone feels comfortable, everyone feels happy? Instead he just used his Twitter to attack her, which I think as a leader is completely wrong. And I think any next leader of Scotland should be consulting with women, because we've seen, obviously, there were transgender prisoners in women's prisons. That has now been changed due to outcry. And now we're seeing transgender activists trying to use the new hate speech law to report misgendering. So there needs to be some changes, but the next leader needs to consult with people with different opinions.
Absolutely. Author and media personality Ollie London, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Joining us is Small Business Women Australia CEO Amanda Rose. Amanda, great to have you back on Power Hour. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Look, I want to get to what's happening in America in a moment, but let's start with what's happening in Australia, because we've seen probably one of the biggest fails from a leader, a Prime Minister, in a very long time, when Anthony Albanese brought a domestic violence rally organiser to tears. Also, he's been declaring that he's the Prime Minister, and that certainly goes to his character. Why are we seeing leaders behave this way? Why did Anthony Albanese feel the need to act in such a way?
It is very disappointing. So essentially he was offered to speak. She said, would you like to speak? And obviously there were 5 demands she wanted to put forward for him. And he was like, well, I don't agree with those demands. I don't want to speak. But what happened was he turned up, realised how many people were there that were heckling him. And he's like, oh no, this is obviously bad for my political career. I've got to get up and speak, and then use that whole I'm the Prime Minister, I run this country, which is still interesting because it doesn't seem like he's running it only into the ground at this rate. But it was more the fact that once he did that, he lied, and then she cried, and he didn't stop, right? And so he gaslit a girl, humiliated her. This is not the characteristics we want from someone who's designing policy for women or for the country. Right? And it was good in a way that people got to see the character during difficult situations. And if anything, people need to say, you know what, that was poor behaviour. I still might vote that way. I still might prefer Labor over Liberal, but I demand a better leader in Labor.
It doesn't seem like a leader would be that secure if they have to declare that they are the Prime Minister. I had my moments back in Melbourne during the COVID years when I was questioning Daniel Andrews, and it certainly wasn't always received well. But why do politicians act this way? You study leadership.
Don't you know who I am?
Of course. Well, exactly. What does it tell you about them?
Arrogance. Yeah. And look, the reality is superiority and inferiority are 2 sides of the same coin. So if someone is acting superior, it means they feel extremely inferior. And that is not what we want in leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, let's talk about what's happening in America. It's just, I keep saying it, hard to believe what we're seeing play out. We've seen these anti-Israel protests at American universities across the country. How has it gotten to this point? How have these universities, institutions really let students down by failing to act that now it's been 7 months since Hamas attacked Israel and we're seeing this rise of anti-Semitism?
I think what the issue is here, well, I always blame the government because they love divisive tactics. They love it when people are at each other and at each other's throats. And people protest when they feel like they're not being heard. And then you've got the people that take advantage of a protest and are violent. And then the people that are genuine in their plight, right, as demonised. And I think this is a classic case. So there are a lot of people that have family in Palestine that want to be heard. Hang on a minute, can you listen to us? And the government doesn't. The government's in a lot of areas said, no, we're not listening to you. And they just relate Palestine to Hamas and to terrorism, end of story. They need to split it. And they also need to sit down and say, you know what, let's take both groups and sit down, treat them with respect, treat the students with respect, put a round table together, have a discussion, come to a solution and move forward. Because when there is no discussion and when you're not feeling heard, you see this in every area of life, people feel I have to protest. Then you've got people that take advantage of it. But I'll say this, the governments love it when people are divided because then they can come in with a solution and look like a hero.
Is that why we're not seeing a lot of action from Joe Biden?
Pretty much.
Yeah, okay. Look, fair enough. Let's look at the election in America. We're not too far away, only 6 months until the November 5 election. RFK Jr.'s campaign has confirmed that he will be featured on the California ballot. Now, this marks the 4th state where RFK is virtually guaranteed a spot on the ballot, positioning him to challenge Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Amanda, you've been following this closely. How would you assess RFK's campaign and where it's going?
Well, it's getting juicy, I can say that. So now people are starting to kind of attack each other. And what's really interesting is now he's been labelled as the protest vote. So you're an independent, you're just going to ruin the election, essentially. It should be down to the two major parties. And it's interesting because it happens the same in Australia, where people demonise that third independent or someone that's not the two major parties. The reality is, if the two major parties listened to the people in the first place, there wouldn't be such support for an independent candidate. So how about they listen to what RFK is saying? Why do people want him? And then look at what you stand for and what policies do you need to change in order to get those people on side.
Look, RFK has come out today saying that he would like the opportunity to debate Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Would you like to see that?
Absolutely, I'd love to see that. I really would. A three-way debate.
Yeah, I think you're not alone. That's funny, Joe Biden hasn't taken up the offer yet.
Never does, and that's the thing. And that is also a concern, the fact that he's not.
Well, look, we know Joe Biden is known for making public mistakes, a few gaffes here and there. Do you know the answer to this one? How many times has he made gaffes in public this year alone?
100 and actually I'd say 1,000, but I would say that they've admitted to what, 148?
They've admitted to 148, which is just astonishing. It hasn't even been 6 months. So according to reports by the Daily Caller, Joe Biden has made at least 148 gaffes and public blunders this year alone. Look, I said on Sky News earlier this week that anyone in the spotlight would be forgiven for making a mistake here and there. It happens. But 148, you say 1,000 in less than 6 months. As a leadership expert, what do you make of it?
Well, some of them have had to completely reverse. So it's not like, oh, it's a little mistake. It's like, no, it's the complete opposite to what he said is what he actually means. This just highlights that he's not the one running the show, right? And I'd really love to see an investigation, a really good documentary on the people who are making the decisions behind the scenes, because they put him out, which I think is still insulting that they put him out when he's not in the state to be able to do this. But who is really running the show and why is this happening? Now, imagine if Trump did that. Imagine if he, or RFK, if anyone else did that, they would say you are not fit to be a president. There'd be absolute riots everywhere. People would just like get rid of him. Twitter would be going off. But no, the hypocrisy is quite suffocating.
And it's kind of hidden, isn't it? If Donald Trump had, it had been proven that he'd made at least 148 mistakes in the space of a few months, wouldn't it? It would go crazy.
That's right.
Look, Amanda, finally, actor and comedian Jerry Seinfeld has come out this week insisting that wokeness has gone too far and it's killing comedy. This is what he's had to say.
Nothing really affects comedy. People always need it. They need it so badly, and they don't get it. It used to be you would go home at the end of the day, most people would go, oh, Cheers is on, oh, MASH is on, oh, Mary Tyler Moore is on, All in the Family's on. You just expected there'll be some funny stuff we can watch on TV tonight. Well, guess what? Where is it? This is the result of the extreme left and PC crap and people worrying so much about offending other people.
Is he right?
Well, yes, he is. What's very interesting is that he's a Democrat, yet it was the Democratic Party that really pushed this whole PC agenda. So maybe he needs to become a Republican, I'm not sure. But it's true, and I think this comes down to if you don't like it, turn it off. If you don't like a conversation in a group and you're offended, and some are genuinely offensive and some aren't, walk away. You have the choice to do that. But to demand other people think like you, believe like you, act like you, is really weird and quite unnatural. So if you don't like someone, go and find your people.
Totally. I'll just switch it off. It's as simple as that.
It is.
And then maybe we'll have a bit more options when it comes to quality TV.
We do need more options, and we need more clean humour.
Yeah.
Bring that back.
Amanda Rose, so great to speak with you. Thanks so much for joining us. Joining us is News Corp columnist Angela Mollard. Angela, great to be with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
So much royal news to get through. Let's start with King Charles. He's returned to public duties for the first time in really 3 months, and he says he's doing well in his first major public event since his cancer diagnosis. It's great to see, isn't it?
It is, and it's really fitting that he's gone to the Macmillan Cancer Fund, because it's not just about cancer patients, it's about their families, and that's what he and Camilla have really leaned into. This notion that when somebody has cancer, yes, they're sick, they're the ones that are struggling, but it's all the people around them, and there is no one that has been more supportive than Camilla as a partner. She's, of course, had to, at the age of 76, support her husband, but of course be out there as the public face of the royal family for these last several weeks and months. I think it's really fitting. He, of course, talked to patients. He feels a connection now. I mean, you think about the royal family, they always have these charities, they have these patronages. It's not often that they get to experience what the people that these community groups or these patronages or these charities represent. So very fitting that he was there.
That's right, and he can really connect to them in a way that he probably wouldn't have been able to before, and it really kind of humanises the royal family when you see members of the royal family getting sick, as sad as it is. But it is brilliant to see that he is out and about. And we have heard from Queen Camilla during a reception at Buckingham Palace for supporters of sexual abuse. The Queen shared that the King was thrilled to be out and about. What else did she have to say?
Oh, look, she said, pretty much indicated that he's been champing at the bit. You know, he's not sitting at home in his pyjamas, you know, he does stretches every day, by the way. He does this. Yeah, he does a headstand. He's very, he doesn't eat lunch and he doesn't do a headstand. Now, he does all these little exercises. His sons have written about that. Harry in Spare talked about his father's little program of the day. He also has this really weird thing where he has afternoon tea quite late, sort of five-ish, eats really late, and then works well into the night. Now, Camilla's apparently sort of put the kibosh on that and said, no, you actually have to get well. So you can just imagine the 75-year-old man, he's finally gotten to the top job. He wants to be doing it, and he's being told to just, sit still.
Getting ordered to go to bed or have an early night.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, this role, this very, they spend their whole lives waiting to do this role. He's finally in the top position. It's finally meeting people as the king, and then within less than a year of being the coronation, he's having to actually just step back and not do it. So I imagine that he really did want to be front-footed about the events this week, and we may see more of that going forward, obviously depending on his health.
Let's hope so. Look, I'd like to see him do a handstand. What he can do and stretches every day. What an inspiration.
Well, hopefully it leads to a long life.
Yeah, let's hope so. Look, there are reports that King Charles, though, may be too busy to meet with Prince Harry when he visits London next week for the Invictus Games. The King is said to have a very busy schedule, and it's unknown if he's going to be able to find the time to see Prince Harry. Look, what do you make of that, Angela? We know last time that the King met with Prince Harry, it was very brief. It was, less than 30 minutes? It was extraordinarily, even what I might call rudely brief, to be honest. That said, Harry didn't give his father a lot of notice. He jumped on a plane, and this is what we know about Harry. He's very impetuous. Look, I think they will meet. There's a lot of conversation. Page 6 in New York is reporting that they're not going to meet. I think there is no chance that they won't meet. And the reason being, not that Harry's, suddenly the lovely son coming back. It's because when you have cancer, you consider your mortality. Yeah. You consider what's important to you. In those days at home, those, not doing his headstands, he would have been thinking about that relationship between his sons. Yes, the monarchy is his legacy, but so is his relationship with those boys. And while, we know that relationship with William is very, very fractured, I fully anticipate that Harry and Charles will meet up. The degree to which we learn about it, know the details, who knows? Hopefully Harry will stay, a bit more stum on that. But there's no way that he won't see his son. It's, he's coming over. Meghan and the children aren't coming. There's reports that they will be invited to Balmoral in the summertime. I think that's a bit of a stretch. Do you really? It's a bit too early for that. But Charles will want to see his grandchildren at some point. Absolutely, at least the grandchildren, that's for sure. What do you make of Meghan not flying over to the UK?
Look, the loathing for Meghan in the UK is palpable. I was over there last year, and everybody I spoke to was they just cannot tolerate her. Even, you know, journalists, friends, everyone to people on the street. There is no love for her. I don't know how you win that PR exercise. As you know, she's hired a new PR guru on behalf of a jam, but she actually needs it as part of her persona. And newspapers have been speculating on what the PR message should be for Meghan, one of which was, I amusingly noted, was be less American.
Yeah, or be less like Meghan.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing. You're meant to be authentic and be yourself, but I think what people see right through her is that she's not being authentic and she's not being herself. So she can hire a PR person maybe for her jam or, you know, for her. But how do you win people over when you've, you know, flown over to America and you've just made money off rubbishing the royal family?
Absolutely. I so agree with you on that you can't be part of it and then diss it, which she's done as comprehensively as she has, even to mocking how to curtsy. You know, that's not how you behave. You join this family, learn about it, understand it, and if you don't like it, at least from a distance, respect it.
Playing the victim, I just think, really did not go down well. And if you just look around the world, see what a privileged position that she's in, it's just hard to swallow sometimes.
Absolutely. It's really interesting, though, I think, that other people that have been associated with her for years, like Sophie Trudeau, is now publicising a book, and she's really distancing herself from Meghan. So Meghan's talked about their great friendship and hanging around the pool and that sort of thing. And when questioned by the Times at the weekend, Sophie just sort of said something along the lines of, yes, I know her, but we're not very close.
Yeah.
Or we don't spend a lot of time together, something along those lines, which really indicates a real brush-off.
Yeah, absolutely. And interesting because, you know, we know that Meghan and Harry do like to associate themselves with A-listers and like going to glitzy events. So it's interesting when some people are making it clear that no, they're not as close as Meghan is making out that they are.
Absolutely.
Look, another topic for royal family. This is an interesting one. Princess Anne has revealed, allegedly, that she wants to participate in the British reality show Strictly Come Dancing. That's according to one of the show's dancers. Look, a lot of people, I'm sure, would love to see this. How likely is it that we are going to see Princess Anne as a cast member?
I have never seen Princess Anne in sequins, okay? That is not her vibe at all. She is all tweeds and corduroy and Balmoral chic. It is not, you know, dance floor sparkles. So this show is, as you know, a lot like Dancing with the Stars here in Australia. But I do think, you know, it sort of speaks to getting to your 70s, wanting to have sort of break out of character. Look, she may have said it jokingly, and she is a very wry individual, but can you imagine nailing her? I mean, her son-in-law, Mike Tyndall, of course, appeared I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. That's not a stretch too far to think that his mother-in-law might appear as a dancer. So bring on the shimmer, I say.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, look, she hasn't ruled it out, so let's hope so. Wouldn't that be a bit of fun?
Yeah.
Look, a bit of shimmer. We recently saw the Spice Girls reunite for Victoria Beckham's 50th birthday. Wasn't that great to see? You wrote a piece about how this reminds you of a time when it was important to be young and feeling alive, and that was really when you were having the most fun in the world, rather than being in an age that we appear to be in now that seems to be focused around curating perfect Instagram posts. Can you talk to us about what you mean by that?
Yeah, thanks for asking about this. I'm really enchanted that you want to talk about this, because I think the distinction, I think about when was in my 20s and I'm in my 50s now, is that life was about how it felt. It wasn't about how it looked. I remember having those feelings in my 20s that anything was possible, and the Spice Girls represented that. They represented difference. You could have thick thighs, you could have an afro, you could have red hair, you could be a bit gobby and gutsy, and people loved you for that difference. And now, and you'll be fully aware of this, the clean girl aesthetic, where everybody looks the same. They have their glossy skin and they're sent apart and all wearing the same clothes. And I don't know if that's healthy for us. I have two daughters who are, you know, early 20s, and I just look at their lives and I think there's not the freedom, there's not the expression, there's not the celebration of their quirks and differences. It's almost like social media has sort of shot through and kind of homogenised everybody, and you all have to look and sound the same. And to me, seeing Victoria Beckham, and look, she's a dynamo. She's the real legacy of the Spice Girls. And I love the Beckham documentary, but I love all those women. I love that they're still alive in an industry which is overrepresented in the early death statistics, but also that these women have struggled and they live their lives. But they, to me, represented a moment in time when I felt that the world was at my feet and I could be anything that I want, and I'm not seeing that in young girls now.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. And look, I love the Spice Girls. I was young growing up with them, and I think you're right. You also wrote about how they were all different, but there isn't the focus on being diverse. That wasn't the intention, but they all had their individuality. And, you know, I tend to agree with you. I'm probably guilty of it as well, of getting caught up in the Instagram pictures, and everyone seems to get the same pictures as well. They all go to the same spots, and it's a bit boring. But I have to say, I've noticed that then people are now turning away from getting the perfect images. I think we've had 10 years of Instagram, and now people are starting to post really what's real and what they are experiencing.
That's so true. And have you posted a picture of you without your makeup looking
No,
really... Okay.
no, I'm not doing that.
So I did this recently. I went camping. I had no makeup on. My hair hadn't been washed for 3 days. But and there was the ocean behind me, and I looked at the picture and I just thought, this is me. And I actually posted it. I got the most likes I've ever got. And I think that's because... And I was asking my daughters, why have I got so many likes on this one? And they just said, because it's real.
It's real.
Because it's real. It's just, and you look happy, Mum. Yeah. And, you know, like looking happy, being happy, that's really, that's the currency, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And it goes back to what you were saying originally about the Spice Girls. Look, I also did a bit of digging and found an article that you wrote last year that I love. The headline is, I've arrived at an age where I don't care what others think of me. Look, I'm getting there. And you say, everywhere I look, women of my vintage are unapologetically giving 0 Fs. And you make this reference to a tweet from J.K. Rowling, woman I love, who called out the decision in Scotland to house transgender people in females' jails. Now, J.K. Rowling wrote, deeply amused by those telling me I've lost their admiration due to the disrespect I show in violent, duplicitous, I can't say that word, rapists. I shall file your lost admiration in the box where I keep my missing Fs. Look, why are we seeing more women get to the point of 0 Fs as you so correctly write about?
I think the 0 Fs, I don't actually really like the phrase, but it's a concept about not caring. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's maturity or, proximity to mortality or I don't know what it is. But I suddenly went through menopause and went, I actually don't care anymore. I had this boss when I first started my career, and I start the piece by talking about him, and he really impacted my career. He didn't like me. I got a written warning because of him, and I'm your head girl type. I'm not the sort that gets written warnings.
Yeah.
And he's impacted my career for more than a decade, and it just like sort of seeded there. And then a friend told me she'd been working with him in London, and I just suddenly thought about his name, and I thought, I don't care about him anymore. That's his story. That's not my story. I was perfectly good at my job. It was whatever he had against me that was the issue. And I started to notice when I didn't care about things. And I wonder if I'd reappropriate ZFs to mean actually recognising what you can control in life, controlling that, and anything you can't control, not reacting to it. That's not your business. What comes at you, how you manage it, yeah, great. Do your best with that. But what's that all over there, that's outside your remit, so don't worry about it. I've also been reading a great book on the Stoics by Bridget Delaney, which is called Reasons Not to Worry, and it digests all that thinking about, life actually happens to you. Just live it big, live it with energy, be kind, be good, or as Nicole Kidman was saying last weekend and Keith Urban was saying, choose love. Choose love. What a motto for life. I love that. Just think the best of people and choose love.
It's good to be reminded of that. I was having a conversation that was quite similar to this recently, and I was reminded that what ifs aren't real. You can worry all you like. What ifs aren't real.
I love that. What ifs aren't real. Oh, that is so true.
Well, I love 0 Fs. I'm going to adopt it. Angela Muller, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Prince Harry is scheduled to return to the UK to celebrate the anniversary of his signature Invictus Games Foundation next week, but his wife Meghan Markle will not be making the trip. Riley Sullivan is a reporter here at skynews.com.au, and he's always across the latest headlines from the royal family. Riley, great to see you.
Great to be back.
Prince Harry is scheduled to touch down in London within days without his wife Meghan Markle. What's on the Duke of Sussex's itinerary, and will he be seeing King Charles and Prince William?
Right. Well, Harry's big trip to London has arrived. He's scheduled to touch down in Heathrow within days. Unfortunately, Meghan will not be making the trip, which was a kind of a disappointment, I think. I think a lot of people were hoping that the whole Sussex clan would come over. However, Harry has a busy schedule. He's got the cathedral service next week to mark the 10th anniversary of his Invictus Games Foundation. This is the signature foundation of the Duke of Sussex, and it's something close to his heart. Unfortunately, King Charles will not be there. There's a clash in the diary. King Charles will be hosting a garden party at Buckingham Palace on the day of the service.
So Meghan won't be joining in the UK, but she will be making a trip to Africa shortly afterwards. Is that right?
Right. So the same sort of day we found out that Meghan won't be joining Harry in the UK, we also found out that the Sussexes will be going together to Nigeria later this month. They first met the government of Nigeria last year at the Invictus Games in Germany, and an invite was extended. They're kind of framing this as an unofficial royal tour. It's quite interesting, especially given the Sussexes' history of leaving the royal family, leaving behind their royal duties. Now it seems they're trying to revive that royal fever by embarking on this royal tour. Meghan also has a bit of a connection to Nigeria. When she was doing her podcast a couple of years ago, Archetypes, she discovered that she has quite a lot of Nigerian ancestry. Okay. So I think it'll be an interesting one. I think it'll be something close to her heart. But I'll be very interested to see how the trip pans out and if it looks like a royal tour or if it looks like a celebrity tour.
Okay, well look, this week we found out that Prince Andrew and his ex-wife Fergie are going to be the subject of a bombshell new book. You spoke to the author earlier this week. What did he have to say about the book, and of course, when's it going to be released?
Right, so this book is going to be a bombshell. I spoke to Andrew Lowney, the author, earlier this week. He's in the middle of writing it. There were reports that it's going to be focusing on Fergie and Prince Andrew's marriage. Of course, they weren't married that long. They married in 1986. They divorced in 1996. However, they have lived together for 30 years. They still live together today at Royal Lodge. The reports initially were saying that it'll be focusing on the marriage, but I spoke to Andrew and he said, Andrew Lowney, that is, not Prince Andrew. And he said, actually, there's going to be a lot in this book that will shock people. He said that basically he's going to take a very sort of magnifying glass to Prince Andrew's role when he was a trade envoy for the UK. He's interested to see if the Duke of York was lining his pockets while he was working as a trade envoy. He also said gloves are off with Fergie as well. He's going to be looking into her history of charity and whether she's been using her role as a patron for charities to line her own pockets. This book is going to be huge. Okay, look, I didn't think there'd be too much more that could really shock us when it comes to Prince Andrew, but there you go. Yeah. Riley Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Great to speak with you. You too. And that is Power Hour. Thank you for your company. We'll see you next week. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.